Hello again. I am going to update everybody on what I've been reading. As always, we want to keep a fit body and fit mind. Reading is one of the ways to do that, challenge yourself. I had a pastor years ago who challenged us to step out in faith and read things that were beyond ourselves. And he was specifically talking about theological works, but I think that can be expanded to anything. We need to be challenging ourselves to read things, read new things, especially read old things. I love C.S. Lewis's thought about thinking through our current situation and getting a new perspective on our present situation. We can't read and to do that, we can't read the books of the future. It might not make sense to read things in the present because people tend to think similar things, but we can look to the past and read those books as well. So I'm all about reading things in the present. That's great, but especially reading things from the past. So I want to share a few books that I'm reading right now. As always, I'm reading the scriptures. I'm in the book of Proverbs and reading the Gospel of John. I picked this up maybe a year ago or so, called the Cepher. It's not a Bible, but it's a collection of works that include the Protestant canon, but also include the apocryphal books that you'll find in most Catholic Bible, or we'll find in Catholic Bibles, and then also other ancient texts that the apostles and other biblical authors would have been familiar with. For example, First and Second Esdras, First and Second Baruch. What are some of the other books I'm reading? But anyways, I love the Cepher. So I've been reading a lot of these ancient texts. I'm actually reading Tobit right now. I'm in the midst of Tobit, and I just got done with Bel and the Dragon. So highly recommend the Cepher if you want to challenge yourself to think deeply and get a perspective on how some ancient people would have thought about various topics, various theological issues. I definitely recommend this. I don't have this one with me right now, but I'm also reading just a reference guide to what the early church fathers thought about 700 different topics. Instead of finding a topic and just reading it, I just decided to read the whole thing. So I'm in the midst of that right now. I'm also I just got done reading The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine. And I'll actually come back to this and talk a little more about it. Very challenging. I'm obviously a believer. I believe in God. I believe the scriptures. And Thomas Paine he was not a Christian. He was a deist, and he did not believe in the scriptures. And so it's been awesome to read someone from a totally different perspective than myself and to see what he has to say. And I actually honestly love this book. This is part 1 and 2. Really love this book, and I'll talk a little more about it in a second. So I would challenge you, try to read books that are different from the perspective you currently have. Try to read someone from a different worldview and see what they have to say. I think this is one way to really broaden our minds and maybe even create a little peace in the world, is really trying to live in someone else's shoes or stand in someone else's shoes and try to think the way they think. I think could be very helpful. So Thomas Paine, Age of Reason. I'm also reading this book my mom found and got it for me. It's a thin book. It's very dense, though. It's called Micro-Organisms in the Bible. It's all kinds of crazy things about yeast and microorganisms, bacteria, little cellular creatures. I'm almost done with this. And again, this is way outside my comfort zone. I am not a biologist, but this has been really cool to learn about. Lastly, I'll share a book I just finished and a book I'm reading. I am on a huge Philip K. Dick kick right now, and I got done with the book Ubik. I think that's how you say it. I don't know if it's Ubik or Ubik. Can you say that? Yeah, Ubik. Crazy, wild book. Philip K. Dick, you never know where he's going to go. He's just kind of a wild author, and I'm in the midst of Flow My Tears, the Policeman said. And I don't know what it is about these books, but I love the characters he creates and the ideas he puts forward, the concepts he puts forward. I feel like a lot of authors and creatives, they're either good with storytelling and characters, but they're not great with concepts. Like a good example, or vice versa, they're great with concepts, but not great with story and characters. I think a good example of this is Christopher Nolan. I love Christopher Nolan films, but some of his films are just so conceptually heavy, idea heavy. A good example of this would be the one that came out just in the last couple years. Oh my gosh, it's totally escaping my mind, where the guy's living in the present, but these objects are coming from the future, and the objects are actually living in reverse. It was a really cool movie, but I thought it was a little weak on the storytelling and on the characters. What I love about Philip K. Dick is I think he has a great blend of really great characters, really interesting, compelling stories, but really deep and crazy concepts, asking questions like, what is reality? What makes something real? How do we know the reality we're a part of is real? Are there other realities out there? It's really, really heady, kind of crazy stuff. So I've been really enjoying reading Philip K. Dick. Lastly, I just wanted to return back to Thomas Paine and the Age of Reason, just give a few of my thoughts of it. First of all, I would definitely recommend this book. What's surprising to me about this book, it was recommended to me by a friend of mine who's an atheist, who does not believe in life after death, who definitely does not hold to any teachings of the scriptures. He believes they're fake, phony, were put together by men and cannot be trusted, of course. And of course, he doesn't believe in God. What really surprised me about reading this book, I knew very little about Thomas Paine coming into this. I knew he was a brilliant thinker, but I was really expecting Thomas Paine to be an atheist. And what I was shocked by is throughout the book, Thomas Paine, while he's dismantling Christianity and attempting to dismantle the Bible, he's also making a case, I think a pretty compelling case, for deism. And that's what shocked me about the book is my friend who's the atheist was just raving about this book, how great it is. And I was really expecting it to be in more of an atheistic perspective. And this is the furthest thing that I can think of from an atheistic perspective. And I'll just share just a few passages from Thomas Paine that show he is no atheist. And I'm really surprised a lot of atheists really like his work. But he really, again, makes this compelling case for deism. And it's all about how we look at and view the creation. So, for example, Thomas Paine says this. Where did it go? Maybe I can edit this out later. Well, I thought I had the quote. I guess I don't. I'll have to read the quotes to you later. Well, I'll read this. The Christians have made him the murderer of himself and the founder of a new religion to supersede and expel the Jewish religion. This is not what I believe. This is what Thomas Paine is claiming. And to find pretense and admission for these things, they must have supposed his power or his wisdom imperfect. He's talking about God, or his will changeable. And the changeableness of the will is the imperfection of the judgment. The philosopher knows that the laws of the Creator have never changed with respect either to the principles of science or the properties of matter. Why then is it to be supposed they have changed with respect to man? I here close the subject. I have shown in all the foregoing parts of this work that the Bible and Testament are impositions and forgeries, and I leave the evidence I have produced in proof of it to be refuted. If anyone can do it, and I leave the ideas that are suggested in the conclusion of the work to rest on the mind of the reader, certain as I am that when opinions are free, either in matters of government or religion, truth will finally and powerfully prevail. So a couple things. Obviously, I disagree with his take on the Bible. Surprisingly, I agree with a lot of his takes on Christianity. And in some ways, I think Thomas Paine is confusing how Christianity interprets the Bible and is practiced versus what the Bible actually teaches and says. I think he kind of conflates those two and mixes it up, and he ends up rejecting the Bible, whereas in reality, he's really, in a lot of cases, just rejecting Christianity. And there's a nuance there. There's actually a difference. But I agree with him in a lot of things, especially what he said about how our government should operate. There should be freedom of religion. Opinions should be free. There should be freedom of speech. And ultimately, truth will finally and powerfully prevail. I couldn't agree more with that. Also, he asks this question earlier, why then is it to be supposed they have changed with respect to man? I think Thomas Paine is making a great point. He is at his time when he was alive, he was seeing the Christian church teach things that I would say are contrary to the Bible. For example, Thomas Paine noticed that in Christian theology, they say the Old Testament law, for example, has been done away with. So God had one morality in the Old Testament and another in the New Testament. Whereas he is saying that God's principles, his designs, the laws of nature never change. So why would morality change? I think that's a great point and something that Christians, I think, should be forced to rest with. Where I'm currently at with that thinking is I don't believe the Old Testament law has been done away with. I believe we're saved by faith in Christ, but that as a fruit of our faith, we should be obedient to God, therefore following the Old Testament laws. The laws that still apply, obviously, the laws of the temple are no longer because the temple doesn't exist, etc. But the feast days, the Sabbath keeping, food laws, those all still hold. But anyways, a lot more thoughts I could give you about Thomas Paine, but those are just a few of them. So keep reading, keep challenging your mind. Try to read things that go beyond yourself. Again, I'm reading some ancient texts that are hard to understand, English translations, of course. I'm reading some crazy, heady science fiction stuff. I'm reading some stuff on biology right now. And then I usually have a poetry book going right now. I'll be pulling out a poetry book soon enough. But do that. Challenge yourself to read things that go beyond your comfort zone. I know a lot of you out there read kind of self-help books, leadership books. Those are all great, but maybe take a stab and read something older. Read something from a Locke or a Paine, or maybe a Spurgeon or a G.K. Chesterton, or something even older. Maybe read in a genre you've never read before, but that's going to help grow and expand your mind. And especially reading from people who have a different perspective and worldview than you, it's going to make you into a better person and maybe help you get along with others who maybe don't think the way you do. All right, that's all for now.